Hello and welcome to TABLA EXPLORER, my new film series. My name's Kuljit Bhamra, and in this episode we will be looking at the accepted belief that there is one and only one correct way of sitting when playing the tabla drum, and that is to sit on the floor cross-legged. Now, if you've been following my Demystifying Indian Music video series, you'll know that with my team at KDA Music, we are passionate about making Indian drumming accessible to everybody. So I'm very intrigued and fascinated by any beliefs or systems that I think might restrict people enjoying playing these beautiful drums. As you can expect, I do have a few ideas about where I think this particular myth developed, but before I present these to you, I'm delighted to introduce you to the talented Becky Brass. Yay! Becky, thank you very much for being part of this video.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Becky is a drum kit player and also a drum kit teacher, but she also loves to play the tabla. So what we're going to do in this episode, Becky, is we're going to look at 5 sitting positions, and I'm going to ask you to adopt those positions one by one and then play a bit of tabla. And then what we'll do is we'll have a chat afterwards about how those individual positions were for you. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so sitting position number 1, which is cross-legged. Over to you, Becky. Thank you. Cool. Sitting position number 2, which is half cross-legged. Great. Sitting position number 3, which is what are we going to do? Should we do legs folded to one side?
One side?
Yeah, legs folded to one side. Let's try that. Okay, sitting position number 4, which is legs astride. Okay, and the last position, number 5, is kneeling at the drums. That was great, Becky. Thank you very much. So how was that for you? How were those different positions for you?
All very different. I personally find kneeling quite difficult because I'm a bit taller than, say, a child might be if they were playing it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm far too high for the drums.
Yes.
If I sit with my legs astride, then it really works your core muscles and you have to lean in a bit more, which I found quite difficult.
Okay.
I like having my leg out to the one side because naturally that's kind of how I'd sit anyway if I was on the floor, which makes a lot of sense. If I had my legs folded to one side, that's also quite good, but it might get a bit tiring after a while.
Yeah.
And then funnily, if I sit cross-legged, I find that the hardest of all of them because it can just be really taxing even after 5 minutes. It can be quite difficult and I get sore ankles.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for doing that, and thanks for being part of this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, a pleasure. Thank you very much. So this idea that there is only one correct way of playing the tabla is very interesting to me, and I really do believe that it poses a restriction to many people. But let me say a few things about where I think this myth developed. As we speak, India is the 6th largest economy in the world, and it won't be long before it's the largest. But seriously, one of the big exports from India, in addition to petroleum, gems and jewellery, is yoga. Just to give you an idea of the size of the yoga market, in the US alone, the yoga industry is estimated to be in the region of $20 billion. Now, the reason I'm speaking about yoga is that yoga is considered to be an Indian product or products of Indian origin, and also the tabla drum is also from India. Now, I think a lot of people collapse these two worlds together. The world of yoga and well-being and meditation, and the world of playing an instrument. Secondly, and this is personal to me, I come from a Sikh background, and I spent many years of my life, especially my younger life, visiting and attending the Sikh temples around the country, or gurdwaras as we call them. And as many of you know, when you attend a Sikh temple, you must sit cross-legged when you're sitting on the floor in the congregation. It is actually considered disrespectful to have your feet pointing out, especially if it's pointing towards the altar or the holy book. Generally in India, to point your feet towards something is considered a sign of disrespect. So in a Sikh temple, it is automatic, even though you could say enforced, to sit cross-legged on the floor. Now, my first exposure to the tabla drum was actually in the Sikh temple. My mother used to sing shabads in the gurdwaras, and I used to accompany her on the tabla. And because we sit cross-legged in the Sikh temple, when we play the tabla in the Sikh temple, we sit cross-legged at the tabla. Here's the thing. I personally think it's very difficult to sit cross-legged on the floor, unless you're somebody who's young, slim and nimble, unlike me. And also, if you're someone who has a physical impediment, like I do, it is difficult to sit on the floor. It's also difficult to get up off the floor once you've been sitting on the floor cross-legged for a while. In my 30 years of leading school workshops, I have noticed one thing which has really interested me. When I teach primary school children in schools to play the tabla drum, their automatic and intuitive natural position is to actually sit kneeling on the floor. Sitting cross-legged for a young child is the position that they adopt when you tell them off, and it's a restrained position. But what I've noticed, and this may surprise a lot of you, is that when they come to play the tabla for the very first time, they're generally kneeling, because that's the automatic posture for them. So, in conclusion, you could say that sitting cross-legged on the floor may be natural if you're someone from the Indian tradition, or if you're someone that does a lot of yoga. But to impose this on everybody, I think is unfair. And also, I think it makes people feel excluded, with the ultimate result that people will not have access to playing these beautiful drums only because they can't sit in a particular way. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd be really interested in hearing what you think. So please forward your comments, make some comments below this video, but I'd love to hear what you think. And if you're really interested in what we're doing at Kada Music, please subscribe to our channel so you can stay in touch with the work that we're doing. Thank you very much for watching this video.